Hello you lovely lot and welcome to my channel. I'm Katie and today I thought I would continue with some of the items I'd purchased from my local art store which is sadly closing down. One of the items I had my eye on was the Derwent Shade and Tone Mixed Media Set. Now I must admit, I've got quite a few Derwent palettes and I quite enjoy them. I always feel like they offer something a little different each time, so whenever I see one I haven't got, I'm kind of there already. So it is the standard Derwent palette here, and we have obviously the pans of different paints there, a little spongy thing, a water brush, and obviously a mixing area as well within the lid. With this being a mixed medium set though, it also comes with 3 pencils. We have a onyx pencil in black, a Derwent drawing pencil in terracotta, and a Derwent graphic pencil in 3B. But also let's talk about these paints. So they are a 12 pan set. And of course the individual pans come out, as well as being allowed to take out 6 at a time should you wish. I kinda like to keep them all together though. As always, I pre-soak them using a pipette, and generally I do find the Derwent paints do tend to activate quite quickly, so there's no leaving it on there for ages. So the delicious 12 colours that we have are the Inktense Mars Orange, Inktense Sanguine, Inktense Venetian Red, Inktense Sepia, we have a Graphitint in Autumn Brown, a Tinted Charcoal in Burnt Embers, another one in Burnt Earth. Back to the Inktense we have a Sepia Ink, a Graphitint Graphite Grey, Pastel Shade Storm Grey, Inktense White, and Inktense Black. And I quite like the fact that this set really is quite mixed media in a sense, and it includes different pans from the different ranges they have. With the exception of the metallics of course, but I guess they are their own thing. Swatching out the mass tones there, obviously these are quite earthy colours, and as you saw from the packaging, they are, I guess, designed for portraits or just anything that has those natural earthy colours. I thought I'd see if the pencils offered any water soluble properties, but they didn't, so we moved on from that. So with them having, I guess, a bit of a portrait theme going on, I thought that would be the perfect thing to start off with, just to get to know these materials. The pencil, well, it was a pencil for sketching out things. I guess it's kind of handy to have it in there. And with it being 3B, that means the lead's soft enough to leave a good mark. Obviously it's going to be a little darker, but when it comes to lifting it away with a kneaded eraser, not a problem at all. And it leaves just enough behind so I can see what I need to paint. The paper I'm using is the Fluid. I want to say it's rough, it's either the rough texture or the cold press. I just wanted something where the paint could do its own thing a little bit and I could get a few textures in there. I do apologise though, I can't for the life of me remember whether it's a rough or a cold press, but it's the 300 GSM and it's in the glued pad as well, and that meant I just didn't have to tape it to a board. I started off with a wet and wet technique, and I just used one of the lightest colours there just to get a bit of a foundation there, and then go in with a slightly deeper colour for just a little bit of definition, because eventually that paint's going to build up enough where I'm not going to see those lines, so it's just good to get some of those shadows down first. With the majority of this set being in Inktense, you do have to bear in mind that once that layer is dried, unless you put a lot of effort into it, it's not really going to budge again. So you've got to kind of be careful with the marks you put down, or you can just throw caution to the wind and just go for it anyway and just say it's part of the texture. Now I had every intention of creating quite a loose picture with this. I thought, yes, I've got all the colours planned out for me, I don't need to think, I just need to throw the paint on there. And I originally did try that, and then as each layer was building up, I kept trying to refine it even more. I'm terrible for this. At least when it comes to portraits. So if you're still watching, don't worry, I have another painting as well a little bit further on in the video, which again demonstrates a more loose technique, which I think really highlights how nice this paint set actually is. It's really strange because, like I've mentioned, I do own quite a lot of these Derwent paint sets. I've never really thought about using them together. I've always sort of had this ridiculous purist idea of just keeping my tinted charcoals just to themselves and keeping the tinted graphites away from all the others. And I never really thought about mixing them together, and it's a little bit daft really, because why wouldn't I? There are certain colours and pigments throughout all of the ranges which, yes, they kind of exist. You're going to get certain grey tones with different palettes, but some of them are going to granulate, some of them are going to have more of a glazing effect, and to be honest, until I'd picked this set up, I'd never really given it much thought. It's really odd thinking about it, but I bought my first Inktense set, I think it was in 2019. Yes, it was 2019, and I'd say that was probably one of my first proper watercolour sets for quite a while, and I didn't actually realise that Inktense didn't come back to life. I guess I never really gave it much of a chance to when I was using it. I'd just perhaps do a single layer. And it's quite interesting really to see how many different sets they've developed over the years and experimented, I guess, with different mediums, even though it is all technically a watercolour medium, but you know what I mean. It's actually making me want to experiment a little bit more with, I guess, using the charcoal with the Inktense, or maybe using some of the graphite with the pastels. I mean, how on earth would that go? I know I've used the Inktense with the pastel tones before and that worked out great, so what was I scared of? I don't know. Anyway, after laying down the main form of the face with the paint, it was time to just start working in a little bit of details with the terracotta pencil. And if I hadn't have used such a rough paper, I think I probably would have had a bit more success. However, after creating such a smooth background and then going in there and adding this pencil texture, I'll be honest, it freaked me out a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily say it was wrong, but I'd just not done that for a long time. I always kind of think your watercolour paper, especially if it's a textured one, is purely for your watercolours. So to actually use a pencil on there was, well, it was a bit daunting for me, but to be honest, I like how it enhanced things, and I like the fact that when I went over it in more colours, it sort of softened it out a little bit, but not too much to the point where I didn't see those textures that I'd put down. And it was really handy as well for adding those details in. I mean, sometimes there's only so much you can do with a brush, and especially with the colour range that's provided. To paint the model's hair, I added a very light tone to begin with, and my idea behind that was that it would do, and I guess the best way to describe it would be a refraction of the light through the hair. I thought if I just add that light colour down first rather than just having to add it in later, it might just make it look a little bit more authentic on how the light behaves through the hair and the textures within the hair. Believe it or not, I'm actually using the sepia ink for the hair. It is so dark. On the swatch I originally plotted out, they almost look identical. I'd say the black has a bit more of a consistent deep colour to it, whereas the sepia is just a little bit lighter, and with a lighter wash you can see more of a colour through it. But it really did surprise me how pigmented that was. A little goes a long way. Anyway, by this point in the picture, I was becoming a little bit better with using the pencil over the top and overcoming that fear a little bit. I did want to try and utilise everything I could in this picture to begin with. I must hasten to add though, and if you're a regular on here, I'm sure you'll have noticed I don't use the water brush. I'm just not a fan of them. Maybe if I'm out and about, yes, it's handy, but to be honest, I don't like them. They change the consistency of the water, and as much as I want to loosen up, I would at least like to have some control over some of the elements, and the water flow from the brush is one of them. Now, I do have a little confession to make here. I do end up using the Inktense set 1 just to add a little bit of colour to this character's lips, because I think tonally I got it right, but it didn't make sense, if that makes sense. The balance just wasn't quite right, and I think it just needed just a little hint of colour there. And I also use a colour on the model's shirt as well. Again, I couldn't find anything that I'd be comfortable substituting without it looking odd, so I don't feel too bad about using that at all. I think if I've got a little criticism, and it's not really, but I do feel that because this is aimed at drawing portraits, and I do appreciate the variety of colours there, I do feel like you can get a good variety of skin tones on there. I find it quite inclusive in my opinion, but it would have been nice to perhaps have added maybe a sort of very cool red in there, just so you can add tints across perhaps cheeks and lips, and maybe a few blues and violets in there. But that's just me nitpicking, and let's face it, I can just go in the drawer and get those colours if I want. Moving on to the second picture, and don't worry, I will go through both of them at the end. I thought I'd do a picture of an owl because the colours are kind of similar there. The paper I've used is the Grumbacher watercolour paper. I've featured that before as well on this channel, and I just thought there's a bit of texture there, but it's not completely smooth, and that'll allow me to be a little bit looser, but without having those issues of using the pencil. Now again, similar to the start of the previous picture, I did a wet and wet technique. I wanted them colours to do their own thing on this one. I wanted there to be some textures, and I wanted to see, I guess, if there was a bit more of an interaction with those different mediums in there. I used quite a soft moppy brush just to get those colours down to begin with, just the initial adding that base tone in there. And then whilst the paint was still wet, or while the areas were still wet, I'd go in there and just add a couple of touches of other colours here and there. And I quite liked it. I feel at this point I'd loosened up. I think for me at the moment, on this ongoing journey of being an artist and constantly trying to develop, I find I can use a looser style more at ease when I'm doing animal portraits, for example. I think it's still going to look like the animal which I'm doing, and I don't know if that's the right attitude to take or not, but that just seems to fit well with me. I think with portraits at the moment, I do want to work on it, but I find it quite difficult to capture a person's face loosely without it going a little bit too unpredictable, if you know what I mean. So if a brush mark's slightly off, then it's going to alter how the whole overall face looks. So that is something I need to work on, but for animals, not a problem. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. It's still going to look like the animal. I also took advantage of the mixed mediumness of this set and incorporated a lot more of the charcoal and the graphite colours that were included in the set. I thought them beautiful textures they created would be absolutely perfect for, I guess, replicating those textures on the owl's plumage. To make it stand out more, I gave the whole background a really good wash in the Inktense black. I know it looks a bit streaky right now, but don't worry, we go over it in another layer. It's not going to affect what's beneath it, which is wonderful. I like how intense you can get the Inktense. See what I did there? If you're still here, comment down below. But I really liked how intense that black could get, and it was perfect for doing the owl's eye and just leaving a bit of the shine in there still. It was lovely. It created a really nice contrast, so it really can go quite dark, but for the background I just needed to get it down first, just so I could figure out the rest of the form of this owl. Now, it looks like I'm using the black paint right now but actually, again, that was the sepia ink. I just can't believe how dark it is. And even when it's dried, it doesn't, the values of it don't change that much. I do tend to find though with some of the Derwent products, they do dry a little bit lighter than they go down, so that is something to bear in mind. But hey, especially with the Inktense stuff, like I've mentioned numerous times already, you can layer it up and you can intensify that colour as you go along. I absolutely love how this developed as I was working on it, and when I added that additional coat of black paint there, it just made everything that I'd done on the owl, all the detailing, all the form, really, really stand out, and I was very happy with this set. I know to a certain extent I could probably put this together with a lot of the supplies I already have, but again, looking upon it, I'm not sure I have quite so many earth tones in the Inktense. I'll have to check. And as well, I did purchase the Inktense set too, and I will be doing a video on that at some point, but one thing at a time. I'm quite enjoying these at the moment. This is where I start using the onyx pencil, or onyx, I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. I've always said it's onyx, and that was perfect for getting those final details in. And as you'll see, returning back to the first picture, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I think there are definitely improvements that need to be made, but I think the materials really worked nicely to create a nice portrait set. Looking at the owl picture at close up, again, I really like how loose this allowed me to be, but also allowing me to add those details in there with the pencil where I thought it would matter and where I'd want the eye to follow. But of course, let me know down below what you guys think of this set and whether you own it and whether you enjoy it too. I want to say a massive thank you for watching, especially if you've made it this far into the video. It's been a while since I've done a long one like this. If you want to watch some more, there's 2 more videos on screen I think you'll enjoy, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye!